Now this is the time of year when most channels would be doing a Christmas special. I don't know if this would really qualify as a special. I've got something special to show you, but to make it a Christmas special, there we go. Right, so the thing I've got here on my right hand side is a Sony Laserdisc recorder. Now with YouTube videos, of course, anyone can click and watch, so there's going to be a wide variety of knowledge and experience watching this video. There's going to be a couple of main groups though. I'd say in the middle there's going to be those people who are saying, oh, I didn't know they did a Laserdisc recorder. I knew about Laserdisc though. And then there's going to be the people that said, oh, I did know about a Laserdisc recorder, but I've never seen one before. This will be interesting. And then there's all those kind of outlying groups of the people who are like, well, I used to use one of these every day at work. There's nothing special about that. And then there's going to be people who are like, what the heck's a Laserdisc in the first place? So I think I'd better aim this at the middle group, the people who are just interested in seeing, well, what is this? How does it work? What did it do? Why did it exist? Now, when I was offered this by a nice chap called Paul, he said, we need the space, we're going to bin it, would you want it? And I said, well, yeah, all right, I'll have it. I've got nowhere to put it either, but I thought it would make an interesting subject for a video. Now, when he offered it to me, I knew very little about Recordable Laserdisc. I knew that it had existed because Lucasfilm had used it on their Edit Droid non-linear computer-based editing system. Now, if you don't know anything about Edit Droid, there's a whole documentary on YouTube about that, so I'll link to that in the video description text box. But that was really the only use I'd heard of for Recordable Laserdisc. So since I've got this, I've been doing a lot of reading up. It's quite hard to find out much information about it because this is a device that's designed for professional use. It wasn't sold to the public. So it's been a bit hard to get the information together, but I've got quite a bit. I'll tell you all about this device and Recordable Laserdisc in general. Okay, let's go right back to the very beginning. 1969 is when work starts on an optical laser video disc system. That came out in 1978 in the US as DiscoVision. Now, DiscoVision was not a commercial success. By 1981, DiscoVision had been sold to Pioneer of Japan. But the engineers behind the development of that optical laser video disc system then went on to create their own company, ODC, the Optical Disc Corporation. Now, they set about creating a recordable laserdisc, not to be sold to the general public, but for small run applications, things for professional use. You see, a laserdisc like this is pressed in a factory in the hundreds or the thousands. ODC was setting about creating a format that you could just make one of if you wanted. And they came out with it. In 1984, they brought out the RLV, the Recordable Laser Videodisc. Now, unlike these ones, it had a red tint to it because of the method of recording on it. However, the disc was compatible with normal Laserdisc players. So you could create one disc yourself and then just burn it and play it back on a normal machine. It was a worm system though. Write once, read many. Once you'd recorded on it, you couldn't erase anything, you couldn't re-record over it. What you'd recorded on that disc was then set. But it was useful for just doing one-off discs or maybe even small runs of discs. Now that, I believe, is the system that was used by Lucasfilm for their Edit Droid. The machine I've got here came later. In fact, there were a number of different machines. Not only did ODC bring out their disc in '84, throughout the 80s there were further developments by other companies. All of these incompatible with each other. In fact, all these systems other than that original one from ODC, the RLV, were not playable on normal machines because unlike that first one that just recorded on a disc that could fit in a machine, the other ones used caddy-based systems. Now the one that I've got here, this Sony system, I believe came out in 1989, or at least that's the date when it came out in the US. Perhaps it might have been a bit earlier in Japan. This is known as CRVdisc, so again completely incompatible with all the others, and like the other ones it uses discs that are in a caddy. And this is the box for a disc. I've got one blank disc with this. So here's, it's hard to show this, it's so big. There you go. Right, so that's the box we've got. There's the disc labels, and there's the disc itself. This is what, and I don't know how much what one of these cost. I think we're talking hundreds dollars or pounds, like a few hundred, 200-300, that kind of thing for one of these discs. Remember, write once, read many. Once you've used it, that's it. You have to get another one. So let's just put that box to one side. So a very expensive format. Double-sided, A and B. We've got a plastic cover on here. Now on one of these you could hold 24 minutes of video on each side with accompanying PCM audio, or I think it's 36,500 still images. If I've got that number wrong, I'll put the right number on the bottom of the screen. But yeah, as you can see, it's held in a caddy and it just looks like a giant floppy disk, doesn't it? In fact, here's a floppy disk to go next to it. It's quite an amusing comparison. Of course, the 3.5-inch floppy disk was a Sony format. I think they called it the micro floppy originally. The original Sony one didn't have a spring-loaded door. You had to manually open it, but a consortium used the Sony design to come up with the 3.5-inch floppy that we became familiar with and has now become immortalised as a save icon. So what you're looking at here is the video processor on the top and the recorder on the bottom. This LVR 6000 dates from the early 90s. It was replacing the LVR 5000 that came out in 1989. The processor deals with all the inputs and outputs. All of these are analog and standard definition. It will handle RGB, component or composite video in and out in NTSC or PAL formats. Note that the RGB and component video are a big step up quality-wise over consumer Laserdiscs, which just held composite video. Now, even though this machine cost somewhere in the region of £25,000 when new, technology has moved on so much so that it's now worthless. I mean, one of these was up for sale on eBay recently, fully working, with a buy it now price of £15, and it didn't sell. This is an analog device with expensive write-once discs that aren't being made anymore. If you want to store and play video and photos, there are now much better, cheaper and higher quality ways to do that. I'm very fortunate to have the remote as well, because whilst it does have the same buttons as on the machine, it also has additional ones, and this can be used either infrared or connected up to the front of the device via a wire. That's for operation if it doesn't have line of sight to the receiver. Now around the back, the recorder that's on the bottom here is connected up to the processor on the top by 3 cables on the left hand side. There's a 36-pin connector and then 2 wires that are labelled up as MPX out and in. It can be connected up to another recorder. There's also an RS-232 socket on here for linking it up with a separate controller perhaps, or connecting it to a computer to cue or automate playback of what's on the disc. And you can see from this one on the hours meter that it really hasn't seen a great deal of use. Presumably after a couple of years they just moved on to some other technology. Now this one came with a cable that was wired up to output the video over RGB via SCART. And it was accompanied by a Philips monitor, a CM8732, which has got the appropriate connection on the back. There's just one slight problem with this whole thing though. After wiring it all together for the first time today, I discovered that despite the fact it all switches on and lights up, it isn't actually working. I'll explain more about that in a moment. Now, I mentioned still images earlier on. That is one of the uses that these things were put to. In fact, this is the use that this particular machine was used for. You see, the thing with these discs is, even though I mentioned they record once, you don't have to record the whole thing. It's not like sort of burning a CDR that's just the whole thing and that's it. You can record a tiny little bit as small as a single frame. So these things were often put to use in like scientific environments. Say somebody's got like a microscope or something and they're watching the development of a cell and they're taking an image every minute or whatever, and then they can say, oh well, what did it what was it looking like at 7:30 last night? And you go, you type it in and you look at that exact frame for that time. So yeah, you can store just one frame at a time. I'll explain more about how that still frame function was used for other purposes in a moment. I put the word out on Patreon to ask a couple of people on there if they had examples of uses for these. I'll explain some of those in a minute. But yeah, here's the problem I've got. Put the disc in and you put it up to a point, it latches, and then it draws it in, and at that point it says error and spits it out again. So I wasn't expecting it to be this difficult. I thought this was just going to work, but I think we're going to have a look inside, see if we can get it working. Otherwise, this video is going to be more of a letdown than the average Christmas, especially after all that build-up. This thing's put together like a big old desktop PC, designed to open easily. Lots of metal in here, very little plastic. Whether or not I can fix the fault, though, is very much up in the air. I really don't have much luck with old video equipment. Hopefully, it's just something mechanical. Now, you can see the circuit board at the bottom here. It's got an edge connector on it. That's so it can be quickly swapped out. If you're relying on one of these for broadcast purposes, say, you don't want to have to send it away for repair. You want someone to come in and fix it on the spot, just swapping a spare. Looking at the chips on the board, if I'm reading these correctly, it looks like the most recent of these dates to 1993. So that puts an approximate assembly date on the machine, at least the earliest it could have been put together. Right, but let's try and figure this thing out. You can see as I put the disc in, the caddy door opens and the disc inside is blue in colour. Now, even if you were to crack one of these open, these caddies, take the disc out, put it in a Laserdisc player, it won't play. It's not just because it's a different colour, it's a different format. So, let's see if we can get it working in this one. The problem seems to lie with the loading mechanism, not accepting the disc. The nasty squeak sound it makes as the disc is inserted makes me think that it's probably to do with some lack of lubrication. Something's dried out over the years. So it seems like the disc might not be getting pulled into the mechanism far enough. I decided to give it a bit of a helping hand by pulling on this loading rail at the bottom, and sure enough, that did the trick. The disc sat down and started spinning. It's a Christmas miracle. I don't think I've ever been as relieved to hear a Laserdisc spin up, but after a few seconds it then ejected the disc. Now I don't know whether it's supposed to do that or if that's another fault. We'll only find out when we connect it all back up together. The first thing I've got to do though is to sort these runners out. I've greased them with some silicone grease and that seemed to do the trick. I ejected and injected, yes that's the opposite of eject, the disc a dozen times or so without any manual intervention. So it seems to be working fine, so this looks like it's time to put the lid on this one and I'll see if I can demonstrate this to you. Earlier on I mentioned I got one blank disc, but I also got a used disc with the machine and I was told that there might be some photos on it. Now the instructions for this disc show that it was operated via a PC with all these function keys. You can see it was some kind of database package which would have brought up the image from the disc. Hopefully I can see what's on it while using the keypad or the remote control. Putting the disc in though, and guess what? That loading error is back. This kind of thing always happens when I reassemble things, but never mind. Third time lucky, the disc went in the machine. And a few random button presses later, and the disc starts playing. You can see the frame count advance on the front, but there was nothing on the screen. I was just about to eject the disc and try the other side, and then this happened. Now, if you're not a fan of flashing images, look away for the next couple of minutes, but for the rest of you, you can see that the pictures on this one show where it came from. This is a catalogue of exhibits that belong to the museum, whose AV department the equipment came from. So no doubt on the PC database program, you'd search for a specific object, and a description of it would appear on the computer, accompanied by a still image that was provided by the disk. From searching for the first and last still on the disc, I can see that they start at frame 1000, which explains the blank at the beginning, and then it ends at frame 6004. So that's just over 5,000 images. Now, just think, in the early 90s, this equipment costs probably getting on for £30,000 to store 5,000 images. Now, how much would that cost you nowadays? Now, one thing that confused me at first was that the enter key on the machine itself wasn't working. So it's a good job I've got the remote, because the enter key on that one is working. The response time when you type in the frame, though, is very impressive. Each selected frame just appears almost instantly. I have to say, though, that it really was a bit of a magical moment for me when all these exhibits started flashing up on the screen like this. It also reminded me a lot of some science fiction films I've watched over the years. You might see a screen like this with a lot of images popping up on it, and there'll be a scientist stood in front of it holding his head going, "Oh no, it's got into the database. It's absorbing all mankind's knowledge." And then there'll be some military bloke who's like, "Pull the plug, shut it down now." And then the scientist will be, "We can't. It's got control of the system." And we'll have to leave that on a cliffhanger because we've got to get back to reality here. Other than cataloguing museum exhibits, what other use could a CRVdisc be put to? Well, that's the question I put out to the people who support me on Patreon. And they came through. First off, a nice chap called Dave, who used to work for the BBC in the news studio, advised me that the BBC Globe that was broadcast between 91 and 97 came from a Sony CRV machine. The Wikipedia article on this calls it a modified Laserdisc player, but it was a CRV. Of course, no one's sitting with the machine in front of them and pressing play every time they want the globe to display. The machine that it would be played off would most likely be a CRV player rather than a recorder, and it would be linked up to other machines in the studio, possibly using the Genlock feature. The Vision Mixer's desk might have a remote controller like this, or it could just be patched into the panel. Now, Dave tells me that they used two machines linked together, one for video and the other for key if required. And this early virtual studio was driven by video from a CRV that was synchronized to a Charisma digital video effects device to do the moves and shrink elements. The section in the box here is the real studio, and the rest was provided by CRV. Now remember, this is the 1990s, this is going back a while. Of course, the big glass obelisk isn't there, and neither is a good proportion of the desk or the lighting rig above. In fact, if we look at this clip, we can see that when the real studio lights are dimmed, it reveals what is real and what's from the disc, and if I jump back and forward between the two, it becomes more obvious. But as well as news and the globe, the CRVdisc was used for playback of any elements that didn't change regularly. So programme titles and promos, idents and bumpers. Another chap called Ken revealed that More Music TV out of Tampa also used the CRV. This channel was like a cross between a music channel and a shopping channel. They played music videos, but you could also phone up and order the CD album of the track that was being played. They also had a phone-in request show, which used three machines. A CRV disc holding half a dozen or so videos would be in one machine playing back the currently requested video. Meanwhile, the next video in line would be getting queued up, and if it wasn't already on the same disc, someone would be inserting it into machine 2, and then finally the third machine was used for playing bumpers and adverts off another disc. Ken also mentioned that the video on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Jumbotron came from a CRV, but this was in the previous stadium to the one that I'm showing. I couldn't find a decent picture of that one though. Now, I mentioned I couldn't find very much information online about CRV, with it being a professional product. Even this brochure is for the 5000 and not the 6000 I've got. But while looking for more information, I found this brochure for Pioneer's rewritable video disc recorder that came out in 1992. This used a 12-inch magneto-optical disc, like a giant mini-disc. It's one-sided and holds 32 minutes of video. Now, there are a couple of reasons I'm showing you this one. First, it was a good demonstration of how quickly things were moving around this time. The Sony one came out in 89, and by 92 this has surpassed it. But also there are a couple of reasons beyond that. First, it made its way into the press. Erroneously, it was being touted as the first laser recorder on the market, ignoring all the previous machines. But at least it was being reported on, which means we've got a firm price for it. $39,950 and $1,295 for the discs. But remember, you can rewrite on those discs. And the other reason I mention it is because this brochure goes into some of the professional applications for this technology, many of which would also apply to the CRV disc. They suggest loading it up with 64 30-second commercials, and they suggest that the additional revenues from one contingency ad break would easily pay for the machine. Now, live sport is somewhere a disc like this came in very handy. You could play back interviews, clips of previous games, put up still shots, stats, and you've got the ability to index mark events as they're happening in a live game, and then you can jump back to them quickly, play them in slow motion or still frame. Obviously these machines have perfect still frame, whilst the machine on this particular case also continued to record the live feed, so you could play and record at the same time. Of course, there are all sorts of other non-broadcast use cases. You saw earlier on the Sony playing back those frames one after the other. Well, of course, that could be used for animation. But yes, all these uses and bumpers and commercials, promos, stations IDs, all that kind of stuff. If you watched television in the 90s, you've definitely watched video at some point being played back from a recordable laser video disc. Now, going back to my blank disc, I wanted to try recording some video on it for myself, although figuring out how to do this required a bit of trial and error. I could record a maximum of 24 minutes on it though, so it came to me that the most suitable thing that I could put on one side of a blank disc would be an episode of regular show called The Last Laserdisc Player. But I'd forgotten to account for the Macrovision copy protection.
Listen, we're looking for a Laserdisc player. Oh, you mean Lamer disc player?
Of course, I could probably get around that, but then on second thoughts, I thought, well, Content Match will prevent me from showing whether or not it works. So instead, I'm recording a burnt DVD of my outro once I can figure out what the controls are. So it looks like you have to tell the machine the frames you want to use, or at least you do in the mode that I'm using. So I timed the video that I got on this DVD, and it's 102 seconds long. So times that by 25 frames a second for PAL, and I'll need 2,550 frames. But to be on the safe side, I'll round that up to 2,700 to give me time to press play on the DVD. And here goes nothing. And to my surprise, it actually worked. It recorded the video and then auto-stopped to the frame I'd selected. And then it played back afterwards fine with no problem. So look, I'm on Laserdisc. Well, CRVdisc anyway. I'll play the version off this disc at the end of this video, but bear in mind that this is a recording from a standard definition DVD captured over components as CRV and then recaptured back out to MP4, so it's not really representative of the best that the format could manage. So there you have it, that's a look at the CRVdisc, the recordable laserdisc. That isn't really a laserdisc, but I hope you've enjoyed having a look at this video here today. And all that remains for me now is to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.